Asia, good evening America. You are watching World DNA with me, Raisha Saigal.
And I'm Jyotsna Kumar. And on the show today, Iran's foreign minister has landed in Ankara after holding top-level talks in Damascus over a shock offensive by Syrian rebels. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Turkish foreign minister held telephonic conversation on the need for de-escalation. Now, what is next for Syria and other countries in the region? We'll tell you more on the show.
Also on World DNA today, demonstrators rallied in Georgia's capital for a fourth straight night. Demonstrations have swept the capital and across the country as people rail against the government's decision to suspend talks and negotiations to join the European Union. We'll get you that story as well on the show, but first a quick check on the headlines.
Syrian and Russian airstrikes prevail areas of northern Syria after rebels seize control of Aleppo. The United States and its allies call for de-escalation.
Iran's foreign minister lands in Turkey hours after holding top-level talks in Damascus over the offensive by Syrian rebels.
U.S. President Joe Biden issues official pardon for son Hunter ahead of sentencing for 2 criminal cases related to tax evasion and purchase of firearm.
Romania's ruling Social Democrats set to win parliamentary elections. Far right secures big gains.
India's Supreme Court to hear a plea on air pollution in the national capital region today, as average air quality in Delhi remains in poor category.
Fiorentina's Edoardo Bovi is in intensive care after collapsing on the pitch during the Italian top-flight match against Inter Milan. The incident happened in the 16th minute and later the game was abandoned.
In our top story on World DNA, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is seeking to shore up support from his allies after a shock rebel offensive saw his forces lose control of Aleppo.
Syrian and Russian airstrikes pummeled areas of northern Syria as Iran's top diplomat visited Damascus in a show of support for the regime.
Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi landed in Turkey hours after holding top-level talks in Damascus. And according to Turkish media, Araghchi was expected to meet with foreign minister Hakan Fidan on Monday before talks with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Syrian regime has accused Erdogan of supporting and funding rebel efforts to topple Assad.
Russia, which is another Assad ally, was helping the Syrian army repel the rebel forces. Russian military has said that missile and bombing strikes were carried out, adding that at least 320 militants were destroyed.
Moscow has announced earlier this week that it was bombing rebel targets. And according to the Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, Russian warplanes have struck parts of Aleppo for the first time since 2016. Russian and Syrian jets also bombed the northwestern city of Idlib. Reports say, citing military sources.
Syrian Army Chief General Abdel Karam Mahmoud Ibrahim conducting a field tour in northern Hama countryside. The visit comes while the Syrian military rushed reinforcements to the country's northwest. According to a Syrian war monitor, the government troops have created a strong defensive line in northern Hama as they attempt to stall the insurgents' momentum after they have gained control of Aleppo.
The rebels' offensive by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham was launched on Wednesday with two-pronged attack in Aleppo and the countryside around Idlib before moving towards neighboring Hama province.
Well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Colonel David Biderosh from Washington, D.C. He is a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies and former Deputy Director for Peacekeeping in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Welcome to World DNA, Colonel Biderosh.
Thank you.
Now, Colonel Biderosh, while the Syrian rebels are moving towards Hama of taking control of Aleppo, we are seeing some diplomatic maneuvering taking place with the Iranian foreign minister in Turkey as of now. Your assessment of the situation, and do you think that the diplomatic maneuvering and the talks can perhaps de-escalate tensions in Syria at this point of time?
No, I don't think so. I mean, what you have fighting the Syrian regime is pretty much a group of forces that have different objectives. So Iran's concern, Iran is the primary backer and patron of Bashar al-Assad. They also provided the bulk of the forces who actually did the ground fighting in the Syrian civil war, to include militias recruited in Pakistan, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Their main concern is seeing that Turkey doesn't contribute to overthrowing Bashar al-Assad. The militias that Bashar al-Assad is opposing are primarily, though, independent Syrian militias. The Turkish-sponsored militias are more likely to aim towards the Syrian Democratic Forces, the U.S.-supported Kurdish-led regime that's in the northeast of Syria. Turkey doesn't want to see them achieve a greater degree of control because they fear that the Kurdish issue will bleed over into Turkey. So there's a lot of people with a lot of motives, and I don't think that one ministerial visit is going to solve it.
Right. And just adding to your point, because you have mentioned all these countries that are taking part in this conflict. Now, what does it mean for Russia, Iran, and Turkey, and how important this conflict is for them? Could you just explain it to us? And how do you see this panning out, as well as for Assad?
Yeah. So let's start with Russia. So right now, the rebels are moving down to Hama. If they take Hama and the countryside to the west of it, that will isolate Damascus from the Russian naval base in Tartus, as well as the Russian air base, which is outside of Latakia on the Mediterranean Sea. So Russia stands quite a bit to lose. Most of their senior leaders have fought in Syria, some multiple times. And it would just be a humiliating climb down for them. So they are vested in keeping Bashar al-Assad in power. And indeed, the word is that Bashar either was in or remains in Moscow. Iran wants to see their client state in place, primarily to secure a land bridge between Lebanese Hezbollah, which of course is on the ropes, has basically ceased to function as an effective military organization, and their proxies in Iraq. They need a land bridge from Tehran to Beirut, basically. If Bashar al-Assad falls, that will be disrupted. So, and they also invested a lot of money and a lot of lives. Some of the lives were Iranian, and most of them were others, in their proxies to keep Bashar in power. They don't want to see that wiped out. Turkey's primary concern is they do not want to have a Kurdish independent organization on their borders, because they see that as inevitably aligned with the Kurdish movements in Turkey, which they've fought for a generation or so.
Right, Colonel Biderosh, while you've outlined the implications and the motivations of all the countries involved in the Syrian war there, Syrian and Russian jets are stepping up strikes after the takeover of Aleppo by the insurgents. And while you've also mentioned the Syrian rebels are moving towards Hama, your assessment, do you think that this is the next big war in the region after what we've seen happening in Gaza and Lebanon?
Well, it has the potential to draw in multiple countries. So the Iraqi Hashd-e-Shabi militia, which are paid by the Iraqi government but answer to Iran, they have said that they are going to move into Damascus, and the Iranian media reports that some of these Iraqi units have arrived in Damascus to take part in conflict, take part in action there. At the same time, there's also reports that the U.S. forces, which are in the extreme east of the country, have launched attacks against the various Iranian proxy militias in Syria in order to prevent them from attacking U.S. forces in what they see as a moment of distraction. So there is a possibility they can draw in other countries. But I think that what really should be of concern to Russia and Iran is the fact that Syria's army, has been in conflict for 13 years and is still incredibly weak. And a big part of that is because most of the Syrian army has not focused on fighting. They're the world's largest producer of the drug Captagon. Bashar al-Assad's brother actually directs that. And they just have gotten so involved in making money that they've stopped taking care of security business. And it is uncertain if Iran is going to be able to move enough forces in there, or if they want to preserve this regime. But on the other hand, after the defeat of Lebanese Hezbollah and Hamas, I think Iran cannot afford to lose another proxy.
Right, Colonel Roche, absolutely, especially with Syrian regime's allies embroiled in other conflicts in West Asia. But thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights.
Thank you.
All right, in other global news, amid the fighting in Gaza, hopes for normalcy are rising along Israel's northern border and Lebanon following the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah.
For Israel, the ceasefire is allowing tens of thousands of people belonging to northern border communities to return home in Haria city, less than 10 kilometers from Lebanon. Life is gradually returning to normal after months of Hezbollah rocket attacks. Schools have reopened and businesses are operating again.
But now, hopefully, everything is going back to normal. And we're here to make a change, and from here just to grow up and to give all the customers exactly what they want, to be happy and good things you can see all around us. What we have here, all the delicacies and the ice creams and all the candies.
Now, across the border in Beirut, there is a sense of relief. At a lively Sunday market, stalls are once again filled with fresh produce, books, clothing, and antiques, as residents milled about trying to reclaim normalcy.
كلبناني يعني مثل العالم كله يعني كنت أثرنا لأنه بتعرف إن كل شيء صار فوق العادي يعني اللي معه قرشين صار بده يحط لنا إيجار بيت عرفت كيف هلا تغير الوضع يعني هلا عادي حترجع كل الأمور طبيعية حترجع كل شيء عادي إن شاء الله وأنا رجعت على بيتي كنت نازح ورجعت على بيتي كمان يعني الحمد لله فرجعنا لحياتنا الطبيعية وكل واحد بيرجع لحياته الطبيعية لأنه خلصت الحرب الحمد لله وصارت العالم رجعت لحياتها الطبيعية. فبعتقد إنه إن شاء الله لقدام أحسن إن شاء الله لقدام أحسن.
In Gaza, however, the violence shows no signs of slowing down. Earlier on Sunday, Israeli airstrikes killed at least 15 people, including children, and destroyed homes in several areas. The Gaza Health Ministry reports that the death toll has now crossed 44,000, with over 105,000 people injured since the war began in October 7th last year.
ربنا يرحمهم كلهم استشهدوا يا زلمه بضحك معهم بمزح معهم ننقش راس قاعدين على النت شهر فجاه لقيت طاير غادي يا زلمه اجل لقى اختي مقطع يا زلمه ما لقاش ودعها ايش الدعوه يا زلمه.
Now, Hamas claims to have inflicted losses on Israeli forces through anti-tank missiles and ambushes as the battle intensifies in Gaza's northern regions.
US President-elect Donald Trump has named Lebanese-American businessman Massad Boulos as his senior advisor on Arab and West Asia affairs.
Boulos is the father-in-law of daughter Tiffany. Then this comes after Trump named Charles Kushner, the father-in-law of his other daughter Ivanka, as the next envoy to France.
Sharing the decision on social media, Trump described Boulos as a deal maker and an unwavering supporter of peace in West Asia. Boulos has played a key role in Trump's election campaign, engaging Arab American and Muslim voters, many of whom were disaffected with White House policy on the war in Gaza.
Now, the businessman is now set to take over a difficult portfolio with Israel's war raging in Gaza, a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, seeing early violations and rebel forces in Syria making advances against the government of Bashar al-Assad.
Trump has often promised on the campaign trail to bring a swift end to the war in Gaza, Ukraine and elsewhere as well, without specifying how he would do so.
And this is the second major role given to the father-in-law of one of Trump's children in his next administration. Now, on Saturday, Trump picked his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's father, real estate developer mogul Charles Kushner, to serve as U.S. ambassador to France. All right, moving on. Georgia is witnessing fierce protest after the government suspended talks to join the European Union.
Police fired tear gas and water cannon at demonstrators on fourth straight day of the demonstrations. Meanwhile, the country's prime minister has rebuffed calls for new elections.
Now, on Sunday evening, protesters launched fireworks at the police lines near the Georgian parliament building in Tbilisi. The police responded by dousing the crowd with water cannons from trucks mobilized around Rustaveli Avenue.
Demonstrators rallied in Georgia's capital for a fourth straight night after they gathered in Tbilisi's central Rustaveli Avenue. Georgian media reported demonstrations in at least 8 cities and towns. Demonstrators have blocked roads in the country's main commercial port. Meanwhile, in Kashori town, agitators threw eggs at the ruling party's office and tore down the party's flag. The country's interior ministry said over 150 people have been arrested so far.
Now, Georgian ambassadors to Bulgaria, Netherlands and Italy have resigned their posts to join a growing chorus of voices against the government's pro-Russian stance. Over 150 Georgian diplomats have issued a joint statement denouncing the government's decision to halt EU accession talks.
The trouble started with this statement by the Georgian Prime Minister halting EU talks.
დღეს მივიღეთ გადაწყვეტილება 2028 წლის ბოლომდე დღის რიგში არ დავაყენოთ ევროკავშირთან მოლაპარაკებების გახსნის საკითხი. ასევე 2028 წლის ბოლომდე უარს ვამბობთ ყოველგვარ საბიუჯეტო გრანტზე ევროკავშირის მხრიდან. 2028 წლის ბოლო არის ის დრო, როდესაც საქართველო იქნება ეკონომიკური თვალსაზრისით სათანადოდ მომზადებული, რათა გახსნას მოლაპარაკებები 2030 წელს ევროკავშირში გასაწევრიანებლად.
The statement suspending the negotiations to join the EU marked yet another chapter in the debate over Georgia's identity. Since 2012, the Georgian dream has been in power in Georgia. Now, critics accuse the party of trying to move the country away from the EU and closer to Russia. The Georgian dream claimed victory in last month's election, but opposition MPs boycotted the new parliament, alleging fraud. Now, on Thursday, the European Parliament backed a resolution calling the election the latest stage in Georgia's worsening democratic crisis, while holding the ruling party fully responsible. The EU also expressed concerns about the reports of voter intimidation, vote buying and manipulation, as well as harassment of observers.
Following the demonstrations, however, the Georgian Prime Minister toned down his comments, stating that he is committed to the European integration of Georgia.
The response is very clear. So we have not suspended anything related to the European integration. It's just a lie. And there are the opposition leaders, there are the media outlets linked with the opposition who are just lying to these people. But nobody has suspended the European integration of Georgia. We are very much committed to the European integration.
In other global news, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te kicked off a week-long tour of the Pacific, starting in the United States and stating that the country has to fight together to prevent war.
Now, Taiwanese president made a pit stop at Hawaii before his visit to the South Pacific and Marshall Islands. Now, condemning Lai's visit to the U.S., the Chinese Foreign Ministry said Lai's visit severely violated China's sovereignty, safety, and interests. Now, China also warned that it will take forceful actions to protect its sovereignty and territory. Now, in recent days, China has escalated its military drills in the disputed South China Sea.
Lai reached the U.S. to a red carpet welcome. The Taiwanese president said he wants to use the values of democracy to expand the island's cooperation with all its allies.
I am grateful to the United States for its assistance and support provided under the principles of safety, dignity, comfort, and convenience, which ensure the success of this trip. I'm especially delighted that the first stop of this visit is Hawaii.
Now, Washington does not recognize Taiwan diplomatically, but it is its most important ally and biggest supplier of arms. Significantly, Lai's visit comes just days after the U.S. State Department approved the sale of spare parts and equipment for the fleet of F-16s as well as tactical communication system to Taiwan worth $385 million. Now, in response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has called on to the U.S. to immediately stop arming Taiwan, describing it as a violation of One China principle and the Three China-U.S. joint communiques. The Chinese Foreign Ministry warned of taking strong countermeasures to defend its security and territorial integrity. Now, in Mexico, cartels have found the perfect recruits for their drug trade.
And they're roping in chemistry students to help manufacture the potent synthetic opioid drug called fentanyl.
Now, marking a significant shift in the drug trade, the cartels are targeting university students with advanced chemistry knowledge to develop more potent fentanyl and synthesize its essential ingredients. Now, according to reports, the recruiters promise high pay and opportunities to work in secret but dangerous labs located in remote areas. And students who join these operations risk both their lives and their futures, often with fatal consequences. The jobs involve experimenting with drugs and precursors, sometimes under extreme pressure.
Now, this recruitment trend is a response to the growing demand for fentanyl and the need to strengthen the cartel's control over the supply chain of this drug. It makes it much more difficult for the authorities to stop the manufacturing and trafficking of this deadly drug.
All right, well, that's all we have for you on this news bulletin.
We leave you with what is making headlines on climate change. Stay with us and come right back. Lots lined up on the other side.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar, and my colleague Resha Sehgal. Let's start with the headlines.
India's Supreme Court to hear a plea on air pollution in the national capital region today, as average air quality in Delhi remains in poor category.
Syrian and Russian airstrikes promote areas of northern Syria after rebels seize control of Aleppo. The United States and its allies call for de-escalation.
Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi lands in Turkey hours after holding top-level talks in Damascus over the offensive by Syrian rebels.
U.S. President Joe Biden issues official pardon for son Hunter ahead of sentencing for 2 criminal cases related to tax evasion and purchase of a firearm.
Romania's ruling Social Democrats set to win parliamentary elections. Far right secures big gains.
Bangladesh wants to renegotiate power purchase deal with India's Adani Group unless it is cancelled by a court, says government advisor on power and energy.
Fiorentina's Edoardo Bovi is in intensive care after collapsing on the pitch during the Italian top flight match against Inter Milan. The incident happened in the 16th minute and later the game was abandoned.
Now, at least 3 people died in rain-related incidents as Cyclone Fengal passed through South India.
The cyclone hit the Indian mainland between North Tamil Nadu and Puducherry late on Saturday. Amid heavy rainfall, schools and colleges in Puducherry, they have announced holiday today. Puducherry experienced severe flooding with 50 centimeters of rainfall, the highest rainfall the Union territory has received in over 30 years. The Indian Army conducted rescue and relief operations in the affected areas.
We have rescued around 500 people, more than 500 actually, and we have also provided relief of food and water to residents who are stuck in first and second floor. Also, we have provided first aid to some elder people.
The Chennai airport was closed for over 16 hours with flights cancelled or diverted. Although the airport reopened on Sunday morning, heavy rains affected flight operations.
Fengal moved west-southwards and gradually weakened into a deep depression. Schools and colleges in many districts in Tamil Nadu are also shut and hundreds of people have been moved to relief camps.
The Indian Weather Agency has issued a red alert for intense spells of rain in several districts of Tamil Nadu and neighboring Union territory of Puducherry. Warnings have also been issued to fishermen against venturing into the sea.
In other global news, Bangladesh's High Court has acquitted former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia's son Tariq Rahman and 48 others in a deadly 2004 grenade attack on a political rally.
Now, Rahman serves as the acting chairperson of Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party while in self-exile in London. The ruling comes at a critical time after longtime Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina fled the country to India in August following a mass uprising.
Zia, who ruled the country as the Prime Minister between 2001 and 2006, and Hasina are the country's most powerful lawmakers and long-time rivals.
The cases stem from the grenade attack on an Awami League rally at Bangabandhu Avenue in Dhaka in 2004, and that left 24 people dead and almost 300 injured. Now, Sheikh Hasina, the then opposition leader and a target of the attack, narrowly escaped the harm.
In 2018, Rahman and 48 others, including former ministers of Zia's government, were found guilty in this very case. Dhaka Speedy Trial Tribunal had sentenced 19 individuals to death, while Tariq Rahman, along with 18 others, had been sentenced to life imprisonment. Zia's Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, had called the trial politically motivated. A two-member judge panel on Sunday scrapped the entire 2018 ruling for all 49 men following an appeal lodged by the defendants.
All right, moving on, the Prime Minister of Nepal, KP Sharma Oli, is set to embark on a 4-day visit to China.
He's expected to meet with the Chinese President Xi Jinping and hold talks with Premier Li Qiang as well. It is Oli's first visit to a foreign nation since he came to power in July this year.
Now, Oli's trip is likely to put in place a fresh framework for cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative. Nepal and China have not yet implemented a single project under this initiative, and that was signed as far back as in May 2017.
Oli will be hoping to sign a second framework under this initiative as an extended cooperation document that will focus on getting grants from China to fund identified projects in Nepal. Prime Minister Oli, who is under pressure within his party to sign a BRI-related agreement, has now set aside the BRI implementation plan that China proposed in early 2020.
Oli is scheduled to meet with Chinese President in Beijing. It will be followed by a bilateral talk with his Chinese counterpart, Li Qiang. Now, according to Nepal's foreign ministry, Oli will also hold meeting with Zhao Leji, the chairperson of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China.
Six more people were killed and 8 others injured in the sectarian clashes between rival tribes in the Kurram district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan.
Now, the death toll in the clashes that entered the 11th day on Sunday have so far claimed over 130 lives. The deadly sectarian clashes have paralyzed life in the region, shutting down major routes including the Peshawar-Barachinar highway and the Pak-Afghan Karachi border crossing. The closures have caused severe shortages of essential supplies, including fuel, food, and medicines.
I'm deeply saddened by the horrific incident that occurred on the main road, which is supposedly a secure area monitored by the army, frontier corps, and police. Despite repeated incidents in this area, the government has failed to ensure our safety. It's the state's responsibility to clear the road and bring terrorists involved to justice.
Located on the border with Afghanistan, Kurram has been a flashpoint for sectarian tensions for decades now. The violence escalated with a fresh wave of attacks which erupted last month between the Sunnis and Shias that left dozens dead. At least 133 people have been killed in the attacks over the last week and a half.
Now, meanwhile, Pakistani authorities said 8 terrorists have been killed in 2 separate operations in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in the last 24 hours. The global economic stage is heating up as President-elect Donald Trump issues a stark warning to BRICS nations.
Trump has threatened to impose a 100% tariff on these nations if they come up with a common BRICS currency or back any other alternative to the US dollar.
This ultimatum follows the BRICS summit in Kazan in Russia, where the bloc discussed boosting non-dollar transactions through initiatives like the BRICS cross-border payments initiative. While some nations push for alternatives, Russian President Vladimir Putin downplayed immediate plans for a unified currency, citing the complexity of aligning fiscal and monetary policies among the bloc's diverse economies.
For India, this poses a major dilemma, a confusion perhaps. Bilateral trade between India and the US reached a record $120 billion in the financial year 2024. Sectors such as tech services, pharmaceuticals and textiles, they are key contributors to India's exports to the US, which stands close to losing competitiveness if Trump enforces tariffs.
Now, meanwhile, a think tank, the Global Trade Research Institute, has weighed in on Trump's tariff threat, calling it unrealistic and more symbolic than practical. They argue that such tariffs would ultimately harm American consumers by increasing import prices, disrupting global trade, and inviting retaliation from key trading partners.
BRICS, which accounts for 31.5% of global GDP and represents over 40% of the world's population, has been expanding its influence by adding countries like the UAE and Ethiopia to its fold. However, the bloc's push for non-dollar transactions and localized banking system, it is being viewed by Trump as a direct challenge to the US dollar's dominance in global trade. Now, with Trump set to return to the White House, the global economic order faces renewed turbulence and challenges. In other business news, the sharp depreciation of the Russian ruble has created major challenges for Chinese exporters.
The yuan-ruble exchange rate jumped from 13.99 on November 22nd to 15.61 on Thursday before stabilizing at 14.91 on Friday. Now, simultaneously, the ruble-dollar exchange rate fell by 8.5%, hitting a one-year low of 114.75. Now, these fluctuations have eroded profit margins for Chinese merchants and weakened consumer demand in Russia, where higher domestic prices have led to fewer orders. E-commerce platforms, which host over 150,000 Chinese merchants, are feeling the strain as sales drop and risks increase.
Chinese exporters are also grappling with payment issues due to Western financial sanctions on Russian e-commerce platforms. Many merchants must rely on costly third-party payment providers with fees exceeding 1% compared to the minimal commissions charged by global platforms. Not only this, some companies report that millions of yuan in sales revenue remain unrecovered from Russian platforms. The weakening ruble has further complicated matters as desperate traders resort to black market currency exchanges, increasing financial risks. For exporters, logistics cost and a high rate of good returns have compounded the pressure further.
Now, despite these setbacks, the Russian e-commerce market remains substantial, with 70% internet penetration and a market size estimated at $53 billion in 2024. Now, platforms are launching promotions to retain Chinese sellers. However, exporters remain cautious due to volatile exchange rates and tariff barriers expected to rise next year. While many merchants are hesitant to leave the lucrative Russian market, the risks posed by fluctuating currencies, operational costs, and limited payment options leave them in a dilemma. Now, for now, the Chinese e-commerce sector is adopting a wait-and-see approach, navigating a challenging and uncertain landscape. right, now let's take a look at what of the developments that are taking place in the world of technology. Now, Elon Musk has intensified his legal battle with OpenAI and has filed for a preliminary injunction in a California court. The move seeks to block OpenAI's transition to a fully for-profit model. The lawsuit names OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Microsoft's president Greg Brockman, and several board members, accusing them of anti-competitive practices. Now, Musk's legal team argues that the company has deviated from its original non-profit mission of making AI research widely accessible. Now, among the allegations, OpenAI is accused of deterring investors from supporting rival ventures, including Musk's own AI startup, Shy. Now, it also claims OpenAI shared proprietary data with Microsoft and pressured investors to avoid backing competitors. Now, OpenAI has dismissed the lawsuit as baseless, calling it Musk's fourth attempt to undermine the company.
Meta is reportedly gearing up to lay its own undersea fiber optic cable network covering over 40,000 kilometers. According to sources, the project, expected to cost more than $10 billion, could be unveiled early next year. The proposed route spans the east coast of the US to India through South Africa, then loops back to the west coast through Australia. Once completed, it would be the first fully privately owned global fiber optic network, setting Meta apart from other tech giants like Google and Amazon, which only own parts of shared cable systems. This initiative would allow Meta, which is responsible for 22% of global mobile traffic, to manage its vast internet demands independently.
Cybersecurity experts are cautioning Netflix subscribers about a phishing scam that is aimed at stealing account and payment details. Hackers are sending fake text messages claiming that users' subscription payments have failed. They threaten to suspend their accounts as well. The messages contain a link to a fraudulent website that mimics Netflix's official platform, prompting users to enter their login credentials and credit card information. Stolen data is then sold on the dark web. Netflix has clarified that it will never request personal or payment information via text or email. The company advises users to avoid clicking suspicious links and to change their passwords if they have interacted with these scams.
Ruben Amorim has Manchester United fans smiling again. The Red Devils brushed aside Everton 4-0 in the first home match in the English Premier League under the Portuguese.
United played a drab 1-1 draw at Ipswich Town last weekend in Amorim's first game in charge in the league. The Red Devils had little control in the beginning,